when it hits you, you kind of go, "Oh, geez, I must have done something there that somebody likes." So, like baseball for me, it's been a passion, ever since I was a kid, and I just kind of continue on with it today. So, I really like giving back to the game.
Welcome to episode 251 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland. When you think baseball in central Alberta, one family name is synonymous with the game: Northcott. And while he may be too humble to admit it, Harold Northcott is an Alberta baseball legend. The Clive, Alberta native had a storied playing career which took him to Eastern Oregon University, where he helped the Mountaineers set team records for wins in each of his 3 seasons, while he accumulated a record of 18-9. And that's where he also earned the nickname the Giant Killer for becoming the first pitcher in school history to win 2 games against big Pac-10 teams. Northcott went on to represent Canada on the international stage a number of times, including being named the most valuable Canadian at the 1985 Intercontinental Cup. He started his coaching career in 1988, helping guide teams at St. Paul, Rocky Mountain House, and elsewhere to provincial titles. He also served as the Canadian national youth team pitching coach in the 1990s, later to become the junior national team, and those teams featured names like Jordan Zimmerman, Ryan Dempster, and Eric Gagne. Yeah, pretty good. Then he coached with the national senior team at the Pan Am Games, amongst others. If you're a regular listener to this podcast, you've heard his wife, Barb, who's heavily involved in the women's game in this province, and all 3 of their kids, Dustin, Chad, and Heidi, all blazed their own trails in baseball. Recently, a little birdie by the name of Brad Mills told us that his longtime friend was inducted into the EOU Athletics Hall of Fame last month, and as it turns out, the recognition was a long time coming, as was this great conversation we had with Harold Northcott last week. Harold, thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate the invite.
Let's start with the most recent news here. Eastern Oregon University recently unveiling its Hall of Fame class of 2023, and you were inducted a couple of weeks ago officially. First off, take us back to the beginning on this one and how you found out that you were going to be recognized.
Well, this one's taken a little time, and it all started back in 2019, and everything was kind of ready to go for 2020. And unfortunately, we hit the COVID part of it. And so those 2 years, it was actually the Hall of Fame, all the inductions it was canceled. So then and then last year they didn't do it. So this is the first year they've had since 2019. So it was it was kind of a long process. My coach Howard Fetz was my coach down there at Eastern Oregon, and he did a phenomenal job on putting this all together and just kind of keeping it in the face. And I guess the bittersweet part of it, all the work that he did on this, and there was other people involved as well. But 4 days before the event, Coach Fetz passed away, so he didn't actually get to see it. But I'm sure he was looking down on it, having a good giggle because I told a couple Howard Fetz stories.
Fantastic stuff. We'll talk about coach in a second. Take us back to 2019, 2020, when the ball first started going. What's going through your mind? Because it's not like something where, whether in any line of work, you're not looking to get the accolades. You're not necessarily looking to get into a Hall of Fame. So what's going through your mind as you're being kind of recognized in this way?
Well, it's kind of an odd one, right? Because you're absolutely right. Like you don't do these things to go to the Hall of Fame, or have awards and different things like that. So when it hits you, you kind of go, "Oh, geez, I must have done something there that somebody likes." So, like baseball for me, it's been a passion, ever since I was a kid, and I just kind of continued on with it and continue on with it today. So, uh, you know, I really like giving back to the game, and that's kind of where all this took me. Right after I graduated university, then I moved back to Alberta and went into the municipal government part of it and was in the recreation side. So then I was able to work with lots of athletes all across the province and continue to do so to this day.
Mm-hmm. Takes back to the days with the Mountaineers, 1984 to 1986. You had some pretty massive performances yourself, wins over a couple of big Pac-10 teams at the time. Any favorite memories or moments when you look back on your time at EOU?
Well, I guess for myself, like I'm a real team person. So probably, I had some. You had mentioned them beat a couple Pac-10 schools. And as a NAI school, that doesn't happen very often unless you're an LC state.
Hmm.
Um, so that was really special for me. And I was the first pitcher to ever uh, beat Washington State. Um, so that one really felt good. And Howard Fetz, he just thought Bobo Brayton was the greatest baseball man ever, which he was. But Howard would wear his helmet. The only time he'd wear a helmet coaching was when he played Bobo Brayton, and Bobo Brayton always wore his red helmet. So Howard would bring out his blue helmet. So that I think that memory for me was really special. The year before I lost to him, like in the ninth inning, they squeezed in the winning run, which was kind of a hard way to lose the game. But I think that was one of my favorite memories. But just going back to the team concept part, like the 3 years I was there, the win record was 30. First year I was there where you hit 32. The next year was 34, and the last year was 38 wins. And for an NAI school, when we play a lot of Pac-10 schools, um, and when I say a lot, I mean it was nine games in those last 2 years. But it, it's a pretty tough schedule that Coach Fett's got, put in front of us. And
Hmm.
we played 60 games every year, so we got the most out of it. So I think those were probably, you know, the things that I really liked. The teammates we had were phenomenal. We had some guys play pro. In this day and age, there probably would have been a few more. Just there's really quality hitters, really quality pitchers on that team. So.
Hmm. You were known as Giant Killer for those big wins. Do you remember where that nickname took place? Who made it up? Give us the origin story of that moniker.
Well, Coach Fetz, he the after my junior year, that was 2 years or the year that I beat both those Pac-10 schools. Um, in the press book the next season, Howard Fetz dubbed me the giant killer at that point. So then I was just known as the giant killer. So I went, I could live with that one. That was a good one. I actually my university ring actually inside the ring has giant killer on it.
Oh,
This
very
is
cool.
as a good reminder.
No kidding. We talk a lot about it now, and through dugout stories, we've been able to share the stories a lot. But back in those days, it wasn't like Canadians were a hot commodity, I'll call it, in the U.S. college sphere. Here you are, small town Canadian, small town Albertan, tearing it up on a big U.S. stage like that against some big teams. How different was that for you?
Well, it was quite different. I had some really good people in Alberta that helped me along with that. Ray Brown, or Franchuk, Keith Vandekeur, John Osborne. He tried to get me down into Oklahoma State, and I turned it down just because I didn't know what I was getting into doing this, right?
Hmm.
So, are there some regrets there? Maybe a little bit, but they kind of got me onto that scene where I went to the junior national program in 1980, and that opened up some doors for me at that point. Now, I didn't go to university for a couple more years after that, but you know what the baseball did for me uh, down in the States, and it's tough, right? It's back in those days, it was aluminum bat.
Hmm.
And it wasn't easy. I mean, it's aluminum bat now, but they're drop threes now. They weren't drop threes back then.
Right.
So it was a different time frame altogether. At my university, I was the first Canadian baseball player to go there. I know there was a guy from Lethbridge there that was a football player, but I was the first Canadian baseball player. But me going down there, what that did, that opened up the doors. There was probably 9 or 10 players came after me in those next, 3, 4 years, which was really good because that kind of opens up some doors for other baseball players, right? And
Hmm.
they were all quality baseball players up here that went down there. So it it was a good thing, but it was a little intense. The first year I went to a junior college, and um, I found that I really wasn't any different than anyone else. I could play with them. It wasn't a big deal. So I went on to a 4-year school,
Hmm.
and there it was kind of the same thing. My coach, he kind of helped me with a few things on the pitching side of it that kind of changed my appearance on the mound, and I could throw overhand, fastball, curveball, but he changed me to throw it from the side as well. So that gave me 4 pitches right there, which
Hmm.
made it pretty tough. They're all different speeds, they're all different things. And so then that opened up the door for the Canadian national team in 1985. And I went to the Canadian national team. I played there for 3 years, and that was just a phenomenal experience. What did that do? Open up another door. I coached the Canadian national team for 7 years. And, you know, I, I'm not big into name dropping, but I got to coach Ryan Dempster and Eric Gagne for 2 years.
Hmm.
Like that was really special. And then when I went to the senior team, Justin Morneau, Jason Bay, Ryan Radvanovich from Calgary, like all these guys that played professional baseball, just outstanding young men. And I think that was probably one of the biggest things I really took away from that. Like these people, they were grounded and they
Hmm.
knew what they wanted and they went after it and they were very respectful.
Hmm. Looking back on that post secondary, you went Big Bend and then you went to EOU. Post secondary always teaches you life lessons, even beyond the ballpark. When you think back on that time, what was the big lesson for you? What was that big takeaway that you kind of bring with you every step along the way, whether it be with Canada or whether you be, where we're recording this one now at the Dome?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me and kind of what I pass on to young athletes today is the hard work part, right?
Hmm.
I mean, you don't get anywhere in baseball unless you work hard. And that doesn't mean just working hard at practice. That means working hard on your own as well. Like you're like it's a full-time job. If you want to be a good baseball player, it's not like you're just going to come to the facility, the practice field, practice for 2 hours, 2 or 3 times a week and play a couple games on the weekend. That's not what it's about at all. And like the strength part of it, you look at what goes on today compared to back when I was in there. I remember the strength program for me. They handed me the sheet, a one pager. This is what you're going to do for the winter for strength, and it was the football program. There just wasn't any information, right? Like
Hmm.
what you really need to do for the baseball side. Now, I'm sure there was at bigger schools. If you went to a Wazoo or Oklahoma State or those types of schools, but a smaller NAI school, it wasn't there. So the working hard and like never giving up. And that's one thing I really see in athletes today. Like that, they want to quit, and you just can't quit. You
Hmm.
just got to keep going after it. Like your dream is what you're going after, and you're going to make that happen. One way or the other. So just working hard and never giving up. Like that'll take you a long ways. I mean, the talent side that's just a different thing altogether. If you got the talent, that takes you a ways too. But I've seen lots of talented athletes that didn't go very far because they didn't have the work ethic or they didn't have that, never give up.
Hmm. One of the things I always said as a manager was I'd rather have somebody with 100% attitude and 80% talent than someone with 100% talent and 80% attitude. Is sort of along the same lines by the sounds of it. So it's cool that we're
Exactly.
in the same boat there. Fast forward a little bit now, and going back to this last couple of weeks here, you get to go back to EOU for this recognition and a Hall of Fame class. What was it like being back in your old school again? Because I don't know, has it been a while since you've been able to walk the halls and see some old faces?
Well, we did go back in 19 um, because that was kind of the setup year for 2020.
Right.
Just to see, kind of how things went. And it was great to go back and see some of the old teammates. But yeah, it was quite different. Like even in the 4 years since 19, new buildings have gone up. Some are being renoed. Went into the library and just went, I don't even recognize this place anymore. Um, so, and even with the gymnasium, we were, after class, we'd always go there and there was a couch and some chairs. We'd sit around and talk baseball. The facilities totally changed and for the better.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was kind of like, is this where I went to university? And it's fun because my son and his wife, they came down as well, and like Jad says, wow, this is a nice place. Like the campus is gorgeous. It was just like, I just kind of took that for granted that's what it was. It was up in the Blue Mountains. It was kind of away. We didn't play a lot of home games because we had snow there just like we have back here. So
Hmm.
45 45 of our games would be on the road. And if we had a home game and it was raining or snowing, Coach Fetz would be on the phone and he'd have another field and we'd be driving. So we got always got our 60 games in, but it was really nice to go back. What they're doing now, they're trying to build a new baseball field, which they desperately need, and so the alumni part of it, hopefully they can help out with that side.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have you'll have the ear of a few people, especially given the recent accolades. You've mentioned him a few times. Share a couple of Coach Fetz stories with us.
Coach Fetz, he was a Rhodes Scholar, very intelligent man. He was an English professor as well. So when you were in his English class, uh, just because you were a baseball player, you didn't get any extra credit there. It was actually probably harder on you than anyone else. So he, just very dedicated to coaching baseball, loved baseball. One of the stories I'm going to share with you, we were playing over in LC State, and he he got mad. There was something went against us, and he didn't say a lot to the umpires, but he was mad this time. And so he spoke to him. He coached. We should go back a little bit. He coached the Dutch national team at one time,
Okay.
so he could speak Dutch. So he spoke to him in Dutch, and what he said, I'm not sure, but it wasn't very nice. It didn't sound nice. And the umpire responded in Dutch back to him.
Oh no.
And so, he just kind of put a big smile on his face, turned around, and went back to his coaching box. So that was that was it. But he had this one saying, and he said this a lot, and I've never heard it since. But if things weren't going well for you, if they weren't going well for you on the mound, or you weren't hitting well, defense was kind of a struggle for you. He says, "Don't get your dauber down. I'll have to let you look up, get the dauber." And yeah, it was. He said that a lot. That's the one I really remember. Don't get your dauber down.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a little Google search before too long here. Uh,
You bet.
you mentioned the connection with the coach. Obviously, you got a chance to catch up with some former teammates as well. What's that been like over the years, being able to keep those connections alive? Because you hear that from athletes as soon as they leave college and in the years after, is like those are bonds you get to keep forever.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Brad Mills, he's instrumental in this for me being inducted into the Hall of Fame as well. He lives in Calgary now, from Montana originally, and it's great to see him again. I see him regularly, um, now that he's up in Alberta. But some of the other guys, there was one guy that I was really good friends with, Blake Jones, and I saw him 4 years ago. But we just lost touch with each other. He's not big on keeping in touch on by anything,
Mm.
phone, Instagram, LinkedIn, doesn't matter. He's just not that way. He's from Utah, and it was just like we saw each other last week, and we just started in again and told some stories about some of the things that happened at Eastern when we were playing there. And he's coming up next summer. Him and his wife are coming up for a visit. He said, I don't have a passport anymore. I left my I let that go, and I said, well, you're going to have to get it again. He says, you know what, I am, and we're going to come up. So next fall, him and his wife are coming up to stay for. I said, come up for a month. I'll show you around. So yeah, it's really really nice. Other people, I stay in touch with them, texting them or whatever it is. But I need to do a better job, and other than emails, I need to get some phone numbers and sit down and talk to some of these people because they were special people in our lives. And when I was down there, Barb and I were married, right?
Hmm.
So I was one of the few guys that was married when I was in university, but um, it didn't seem to matter. They uh, always talked to Barb and did things together as groups, whether it's some of the guys had their girlfriends or whatever it was. It was always really special to be able to just kind of have those discussions with the players.
Hmm.
Kind of old memories.
It never hurts as well when you get to grab a glove and a ball and maybe throw one around, or heck, even playing an alumni game. We were off air chatting about this, and I wanted to bring this one to the fore. You did pretty good, didn't you? You still got it.
Yeah, not too bad. I was the oldest player on the field, and I pitched the sixth inning, and struck out the first guy, and then popped the next guy up and a ground ball to shortstop, and the inning was over. And I went, "Geez, that was quick."
Did you have to have any ice afterwards?
No ice, no, no. There was ice in the cooler, but that was about it.
The best kind of ice, I got to say that. Obviously, after your time at EOU, you had a really phenomenal playing career, including a bunch of opportunities to wear the maple leaf. I'm always curious, especially with the benefit of 2020 hindsight. Hockey players get asked about the maple leaf on the front, but what's it mean to a baseball player to be able to wear the maple leaf on the cap in Canada across the chest like you've been able to do?
You know what? I was very fortunate with that. I did it for 4 years as a player, and I did it for 7 years as a coach. And I just like you're just so proud when you got that Canada across your chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just makes you feel so special. Um, just a quick story. We had in '99 we were in the Pan American Games, and I was coaching at that time. Ernie Witt was the head coach, and we we tore it up, right? Like, we had
Mm-hmm.
the best record in the tournament. We got a bronze medal. That's a different story, but it was really funny because we had a number like Aaron Guile and Todd Betts and Redman, Redmanovich. Like we had probably 5 or 6 guys, Jeremy Ware, that played AAA. Like they were, and some of them did play in the big leagues. But one comment made, the other guy I did miss was Stubby Clapp, who's the first base coach for the St. Louis Cardinals now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys, he said, this has been such a great experience. Why don't we just keep this team together and just play in the independent league? And it was like, wow. Because, in the minor leagues, I mean, it's a grind.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's played in the minor leagues, it's not easy. And if you get out of there and you can make it to the big leagues, wow. But that was the comment. And, most of the team went, yeah, let's do it. It'd be great. Some of the younger guys wouldn't, right? Because they
Mm-hmm.
still had that dream of moving on. But um, things like that really, you just really kind of gives those tingles down your spine, right?
Mm-hmm.
In '99 again in the Pan American Games, we had 2 guys. We had a guy named Steve Green who was kind of stuck in Long A in California. We
Mm-hmm.
had Cubs right-hander Mike Myers. He was stuck in Double A, I believe, and they both tore it up in the Pan American Games. The next year, they're both in the big leagues
Mm-hmm.
because of what happened in the Pan American Games. They were able to handle the Cubans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, didn't matter. They absolutely destroyed them in the Pan American Games, and that's what it did for those 2 players. And you really, the next year you're watching TV and you're watching those guys pitch, and now they're tearing up big league hitters, and you just wonder how many guys get stuck down in there and just don't get that chance.
Mm-hmm. And they get that opportunity at such a unique facility and a unique experience as well, whether it's Pan Ams or nowadays you got the World Baseball Classic as an example, and doors are starting to open. One of those doors that I always think of is the junior national team, and I know it was the under 18 team that Canada had when you were coaching there. You mentioned some names earlier, the Ryan Dempsters, the Eric Gagnes, the Justin Morneaus. When you look back on it over your years of coaching, or even as a player for that matter, do you remember that one athlete where you looked at them and went, dude's going to be a player. Dude's going to go places. Who is that one guy that you'll always remember that big first impression?
Well, I think both those pitchers, Eric and Ryan, were in that category. Ryan was only 16 when he made Team Canada, and it was a kind of an off year for Team Canada. There wasn't a lot of big name players around, and he, as a 16-year-old, he was our starting pitcher in the World Championships. He was that good, and if you look at kind of where he came from, small town. He had to ride his bike down to the ferry to get across to play on the mainland, and
Mm-hmm.
like he was that guy. And Eric Gagne, same type of thing. I mean, it was just explosive, the ball coming out of his hand. Um, but I remember one time John Hart, we were struggling at the plate in the '94 World Championships, and we were losing to Holland 3-1. And John Hart says, "Gagne, grab a bat." So Gagne grabs a bat. What's he do? First pitch, hits it over the fence. We lose 3-2.
Oh man, not that's
but
That's
he was just an athlete.
yeah, just an athlete, right? Like that's incredible. Thinking back on it as well, from a coaching perspective, you've had a lot of success on that front. What's been key to that in terms of whether it's getting the buy-in from the players? What's been the key in your eyes to building successful program time after time after time?
Well, I think one of the things it gets a little tougher as I get older, but like I always put the effort in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I threw batting practice, I hit fungos, I did all that stuff. I just didn't sit back and let my assistants do the work, right? Like I was right in the middle of it, and I think looking back at it, I think that probably the players looked at that and just went, boy, if he can put that effort in, we can sure do that. Some of the play when we lived in Rocky Mountain House, and uh, like there was a group of players there that we coached. We won a Western Canadian Championship in the Double A. It wasn't Triple A, but we did go to Triple A into the 18U division for a couple of years and did very well at it. But those players stayed with it, and we had a number of players from those teams that played college baseball. I think there was 14 on that list. Two of them, played professional baseball just for a short stint, but they got an opportunity, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you look back at that, it just so I don't know. I think the players that they respected that just kind of the hard work. I got respect right off the top, like when we were first come out of university and moved up to St. Paul, just because I was a um, come from college, had a baseball background, and played on the national team. So the kids gravitated to that. There wasn't a lot of baseball up in that area at that point, and they went on and won these 3 or 4 provincial championships in the next 3 or 4 years, and they're still going strong up there. So I think some of that, you get some buy-in just because of what you've done, but you still have to be able to put that time and effort in. Doesn't matter what you've done in the past. I always tell my players, if what you did yesterday still looks big to you, you haven't done much today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the players kind of look at that and go, okay, I guess my 3-run homer to win the game yesterday, I got to work a little harder. And that's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. I remember a quote from Steven Tyler of Aerosmith who said that you're only as good as your next hit. And that was the same kind of thing that I think baseball lends to as well. Is it's great that you did that yesterday, but what are you going to do for me today? So love
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
The success on the field is obvious. The success off the field is something else too, and you've been able to marry the two to a certain extent as well with the family. And we've had the pleasure of having both, as you mentioned, Barb on the show, but also Heidi's been on the show as well. Dustin and Chad have had their own journeys in baseball as well. How cool has it been to have had the family aspect of things and making baseball become a family affair for you?
You know what? I think of all the different accomplishments, and I think that's my proudest is both boys played Division 1 NCAA. They played Division 1 junior college. But I always give the boys a hard time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Heidi played 7 years on the Canadian women's national team. And if you look at my phone, my picture on the phone is Heidi pitching for Team Canada. And I always keep the boys humble and just let them know that, you know what, one day you'll make my phone. So yeah, to have the kids you know, if you have somebody kind of excel in a sport as a parent, like you feel pretty good about that. But when you have three excel at it, um, and I'm not the only one on that side of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
Barb was huge on that side because somebody had to keep us grounded. Somebody had to organize and line things up for us because we were going different directions all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Barb was a huge part in making that part of it successful. And the baseball side on the field, I did that part. But yeah, three three Dustin, Chad, and Heidi just super proud of what they've done and what they're doing now in their careers. So it's really nice to see.
How crazy was that day planner back in the height when all three of them are heading in separate directions and you and Barb are trying to figure out how you're going to get from point A to point B to point C all in one, felled swoop at different times?
Yeah, and it was a day timer back then. It wasn't a phone. It would have been a lot easier if we had a phone. But I remember one time. Chad was playing spring hockey. He was 9 years old, and tournament in Calgary. Barb picks him up in Calgary, drives him to Tabor for the third game of provincials on the Sunday. He pulls into the diamond 20 minutes before the game, warms up, pitches a complete game. She comes back, meets me at the door at midnight back at Rocky Mountain House. And I opened the door and I said, Barb, this is crazy. we can't be doing this. Like, this is just too much. He's 9 years old. So, but that's what went on. And it went on for many years. But, we survived it, and the kids really enjoyed it. And Barb and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And now with Dustin and Janelle, they're expecting their first. Now we get to watch it.
Are you going to watch it, or are you going to be part of it at some point down the line
Oh,
too? You're going to be teaching them
oh,
fastballs pretty early on, I assume.
well, I already bought a left-handed glove.
Okay. You got them all set up. That is fantastic. The final question for you, I am cognizant of the time. This question we ask everyone, and I'm sure you've heard it a time or two already. Wondering what your answer to this one's going to be. What does the game of baseball mean to you, Harold?
Well, it provides for my family and myself. It provided so many different opportunities, and it wasn't just the baseball side of it. And when I talk about team sport at the start of the interview, um, being a team player and passing, that type of information on, whether it's to the kids or it's to young baseball players. I think that's probably the biggest thing is just what you can learn from it. Are you going to play professional baseball? Probably not. But what can you do? For me, I wanted to get the education. Then I wanted to get the good job with it. And I succeeded in that on the municipal government side. And I got to continue to do the baseball side of it and at a high level for 11 of those years. So for me, it was perfect. Um, but but I think, just doors that can open. And whether, you're an athlete, whether you're a coach, you're an administrator, whatever it might be, there's something there that can help you in your life and just make you a better person and to be able to contribute to society.
We've certainly done that in spades, Harold. Congratulations again on the Hall of Fame induction and all the success you've had in your baseball journey. Continued success as you go forward, whether it be at the Dome or at home life, as well as you get that little whippersnapper into game shape before too long. And again, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks again to Harold Northcott for joining us this week. And again, congratulations to him on being named to the Eastern Oregon University Athletics Hall of Fame. As always, if you like this or any other episode, make sure to drop us a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. A tip of the cap as well to our platinum supporters, the Okotoks Dogs and AHP Academy, for all they do for us and for baseball in Alberta. For more on our amazing teammates, head to albertadugoutstories.com/supporters. Until next time, thank you for all of your support online, on social, and on air of Alberta Dugout Stories.